Everyone is here. Well, I guess Jillian's not here yet. But I am going to be recording every class and posting it to the Google Classroom on Fridays. Does somebody, Oliver, will you close that door, please? Okay, so I like to start class with devotions. And I like to start every year with this proverb in particular because I think it sets a good precedent for the rest of the year. And it's Proverbs 1, verse 7. And it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and discipline." And I think this is an important proverb to keep in our minds as we start a school year because we're here to learn and we are here to grow in knowledge. And we're going to learn a lot of stuff this year. And we're going to get smarter. But the thing, hello, there's one seat left over here in the corner. The thing about can you guys all just scooch down one chair? Actually, that would be perfect, and then you can just sit on the end, Jillian. The thing about knowledge is that you can be really smart and make really bad choices still. Like, being smart is not the same as being wise. And someone who isn't very smart can actually be wise. Like, that's the interesting thing about wisdom, because true wisdom comes from knowing our place, our position in relation to God. And the fact that He is holy and He is mighty and He is all-powerful and all-knowing, and that we live our lives and make our decisions in light of that, in light of honoring Him, in light of that appropriate fear of a holy God. And so that perspective helps us to take the knowledge that we might gain and the smarts that we might have and actually utilize them to make good choices in our lives, to make God-honoring decisions in our lives. Because I know plenty of people who are smart but aren't wise. And I know a few people who aren't very smart necessarily, but yet still manage to live very God-honoring lives and are commendable and admirable in that way. So as we learn this year and as we gain knowledge, it is my prayer that we do so with the proper perspective and that everything that we learn in submission to God and submit it to His word and His authority. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you bless us with. Thank you for a new year. Thank you for being able to come in person and learn, Lord. Just after the ending of last year, we realized that that's something that we shouldn't take for granted and that we should appreciate. So we thank you for that. We just pray, Lord, that you would just give us understanding and wisdom this year as we learn biology. Help us to work diligently and to produce something that is honoring to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, yes. So, my name is Mrs. Impellizzeri. This is biology. Everyone is in the right place because all of you were on my list. I am so excited. I love biology. I teach other sciences, but biology is my first science love. So I'm very excited to be teaching it. My background is I have a biology degree, and specifically it's an environmental biology degree from Cornerstone University. And really enjoyed my time there, helped me fall more in love with science. Didn't ever actually think I would teach science, but God had a different plan. And here I am, and I love what I do. And I hope that some of my enthusiasm and excitement rubs off on all of you, and you're also able to love and enjoy biology. I will say this about biology. One of the things that is really cool about it is it's very diverse. It's very diverse. So there's some macro, like big stuff we'll be learning about, like animals and plants. And then there's like small, really tiny stuff like bacteria and protozoans. And then there's stuff like even smaller, like cells and DNA. And then we'll be doing some like more broad concepts. We'll be talking about ecology. We will be talking about evolution. And so we'll be doing all these different things. And I want to encourage you that you might not like all of it, but you most likely will like some of it. So if there's a part that we're doing that you're like, ugh, some people feel that way about genetics. Some people feel that way about plants, like, and some people, but love it all. And so if there's something that is kind of like dragging for you, we're only a couple weeks from moving on to the next thing. Like it keeps changing. So I want to encourage you in that way and help give you kind of that perspective on it. That's one of the very exciting things about biology is the diversity of it. I am married and I have a little boy. His name's Anthony. He'll be 17 months in 2 days. And he's so much fun, and there will be pictures and stories and all that I will share as time goes on. So that's a little bit about me. I got to know a little bit about all of you with your assignment. Everyone, I think there may have been a couple people that didn't turn it in. I can't remember for this class actually. But the majority of you turned it in. The goal of that was to make sure everyone was comfortable using the Google Classroom before this day. That you knew how to turn an assignment in, that you knew how to check your grade, because everyone who did turn it in, that's been graded and returned to you, so that we didn't have to spend this first day going over all that. We get to kind of hit the ground running with all of that. That will be the primary platform for which we turn in work. So most of your homework, really the only exception to that will be stuff that we do in class, like labs. Labs will be turned in class, and then the couple tests that we take in class. Otherwise, everything will be done and turned in online. If you want to take out your biology class constitution, that was one of the things that should be in front of you that I handed out. We're going to go over the class constitution. So this is just going to kind of set a foundation, a tone for my expectations for you for the year and what you can expect from me for the year. So we're going to look through it right now, talk about it, and then I want your parents to look over it and sign it at home. And then I'll just check to make sure you got that signed next week, and it will be worth 10 points. And it's some of the easiest points in the class because the majority of the work actually falls on your parents because they're the ones who have to read it. Because you can sign it after we go through it right now. So give your parents their piece of homework, and then I will grade it next week and give you points for it. So first, number 1, be prepared. You should have a pencil. It is nice to have scrap paper. It's not necessary to have scrap paper, but if you have some, there might be something that you'll use it for. Homework, most of it will be turned in online, so you won't really be bringing that to class. It's not necessary to bring your textbook every week. Okay, the textbook should look like this. Uh-oh. Got caught on my microphone. If for some reason it doesn't, which I see some scared looks at the back, we'll figure it out. So you don't have to bring it every week because we're only going to use it in class a couple times this year. So I will write in the Google Classroom on weeks that you need to have it. And then usually we really honestly don't need everyone to have it. It's like one per lab group type deal. So if somebody still forgets it, it won't be that big of a deal either. But it's heavy and it's big. And unless if you plan on doing biology homework during study hall or lunch or whatever, it's just not necessary to bring it. Homework. Okay, so I make it my goal to get homework returned to you within a week of the date that it was due. So like next Thursday, you'll be turning in your first assignments, or they're due by next Thursday. I will have them graded and returned to you by the following Thursday. Occasionally it takes 2 weeks, but that's only if like I'm sick or I'm traveling. Although the nice thing with Google Classroom is technically I could be gone and still grade your homework, so I don't really get to use that excuse anymore. But it's not great for me to get behind on grading your homework because for every one assignment I assign you, I have 24 to grade. So I like to stay on top of it as well, or it tends to exponentially add up very quickly. And then I get disheartened. So I will get it returned to you. Your homework is due by midnight. So like the assignments that are assigned today are due next week by midnight. So next Thursday by midnight, they should be uploaded to the Google Classroom. Late work doesn't take grading priority. So if you turn it in late, it might take me longer than that week to get it back to you because I'm not grading everyone else's along with it, and I have to go back and find yours and go in the answer key, and it just is more work. And it might take me longer if you don't get it in on time. After the first time your homework is turned late, I'll send your parent an email or something. One of the nice benefits of the Google Classroom is they can technically log on anytime and see if you have any missing work. So that's kind of I'm not the only one keeping track of your work anymore, so that's kind of a nice feature, so they can kind of see that in real time. Late homework policy. For every day that an assignment is late, I'll take a point off, which doesn't sound really that bad. Like, it's just a point. But if it's only worth 10 points, and now you've lost a point, now it's 9 points, which is 90%, which that's if you got everything right. So 1 point, depending on how many points something's worth, can be pretty hefty. So 1 point for every day that something is missing or something is late, unless if you have a reason. The key to this is communication. So if you have an assignment late because you were in the ER, okay, obviously I'm not going to count it as late homework. Or even you were on vacation, or something happened with your family. Like, the key is communication. Like, you need to let me know, why was that assignment late? If you don't let me know, then I'm going to assume it was just because you were kind of apathetic and you just turned it in late, in which case I'm going to take a point off. But if you have a reason for why it's late, you need to let me know so that I don't penalize you for that. So communication, communication, communication. Which that's encompassed in 2D there, pretty much. And I will do my best to get that graded in a timely manner if it's late for any of those reasons. Number 3, don't be disruptive in class. Our class is 2 hours. Of that 2 hours, I talk for probably about an hour and 15 minutes. I get an hour and 15 minutes of your time once a week. Please just be silent. Just listen, okay? During lab time, which is usually about 45 minutes, you can talk. You can, when you're doing your lab, like, it's interactive. You don't have to sit quiet. Just do that while I'm teaching, please. We have 24 people in this room, which is a lot. It's a big class, and things can get noisy and chattery pretty quickly if somebody decides to start that. So please just be respectful of me, be respectful of each other. It's a very small amount, very tiny percentage of your week that you just have to sit and listen. So please, please, please do that. I don't like pop quizzes, and I won't give them unless if somebody is complaining. This hasn't been a problem with biology, and actually, honestly, hasn't been a problem in any of my other classes since I implemented this policy. But I will only give a pop quiz if somebody's like, I don't know, I have to learn this. This is so stupid. Like, oh man, I'm never going to use this in life. What is this? And I'll be like, ugh. And then everyone has to take a quiz, okay? Bad attitudes don't help make something better. Like, I don't know any time I've ever had a bad attitude about something that I've ever felt like, wow, that bad attitude sure helped me feel better about that. Like, I mean, maybe voicing a frustration to somebody helped me feel better, but just having a bad attitude Never did. And there is a constructive way to voice a frustration, and then there is a non-helpful way. And just complaining is not helpful. And stirring the pot and getting other people to join you is not helpful. So I won't give pop quizzes unless people start complaining. And then everyone has to take one. Cell phones. They need to stay in your backpacks. Okay? I have provided this lovely little basket here on the desk for cell phones. So if you think it's going to be a problem, please place your cell phone in the basket. If I see chronic lap looking, I will just start making everyone put their cell phone in the basket. Okay? So cell phones, we'll start with that precedent. We'll start with the precedent of not everyone has to stick their cell phone in the basket at the beginning of class. I'm going to trust that you're giving me my hour and 15 minutes of undivided attention. And then if it becomes an issue, everyone will have to start placing them in the basket at the beginning of class. Labeling homework. This is actually less of a thing now that things are going to be turned into Google Classroom. Okay, so you should have your name, though, on your homework and what the assignment is. Number 7, homework. So there's 2 different types of questions that are in this book. There's on your own questions and study guide questions, okay? So on your own questions are in the chapter. So they're like a section review. They're within the chapter itself. Study guide questions are like chapter review questions. They're at the end of the chapter, at the end of the module. They're actually called modules and not chapters in Apologia. So they're at the end of the module. On your own questions, the answers are also at the end of the module. So you have all the answers to the on your own questions. So for that reason, I'm sort of assuming that you're going to check your own questions. So I don't grade those ones for correctness. I grade on your own questions for completion. So if I assign 10 and you did all 10, you get 100% of the points. If you only did 5, you get 50% of the points. I'm not checking them for correctness because you have the answers, and I am assuming you checked them, or if something was really hard and you didn't understand it, you just looked at the answer. That's the assumption that I am going to go forward with. Study guide questions, I do grade for correctness. So if I assigned 30 questions and you got 28 of them right, then I would mark off some points and show you which ones you got wrong and tell you the correct answer. Module tests are assigned roughly every other week. You should have a test booklet or the tests in an answer key. Just depending on how your parents decide to purchase that. There was 2 ways they could purchase the tests. I will grade all the tests. So how you'll turn your tests in is you will still do it in Google Classroom. Either you can take the hard copy test and scan it in, or take a picture of it and upload those, or you can just write your answers to the questions in like a Google Doc or a Word document and then submit the answers. You don't actually have to submit the whole test with the questions and everything. You can just submit the answers. Tests are closed book, closed note, unless if I tell you otherwise. There are a couple of them throughout the year that I allow you to take open book, but it's the assumption that it's closed unless if I specify that it's open book. You're going to want to check the Google Classroom every Friday for additional activities or videos. I also will have the recorded class posted on Fridays and your homework posted on Friday. Your homework also can be found in the syllabus, which we'll go over in a minute. So there'll be 2 places that you can find your assignments for the week, either the Google Classroom or the syllabus. I'm going to still print a hard copy syllabus because I know some people are still tactile and you still like to be able to cross something out. I like to do that. And so I'm giving you the syllabus so that you can cross out assignments as you... I still write a paper grocery list and paper to-do lists. Sometimes I put something on my to-do list that I've already done just so I can cross it out because there's just something satisfying about that. So I understand. I know we're doing a lot of stuff electronically this year, but I understand the value still of paper and pencils and pens. And then number 10 is more of a note to your parents that they should be checking the Google Classroom regularly to make sure you're turning homework in, and then be able to check your grade, because it will be updating in real time your grade every week. If you're going to be gone or miss a class for whatever reason, please let me know. Just send me an email so I know why you're absent. Just kind of makes sense, right? That way I know to send you the notes or something like that. Finally, ask questions. Call, email, text. Anytime is really fine. Other than obviously like 3 a.m. Text messages will get fastest response. Even if the response is, hey, I will send you an email about this later this evening or something like that. Then emails. Usually emails I'll respond to within 24 hours, especially now that I'm in like professional school mode. Summer was a little different because summer's like summer. So some days I didn't even check my email. Even though technically it goes on my phone, it's like, get rid of the notification. It's still summer. I'll check it in a couple days. I take my summers very seriously. And so but now it's go time. So I'm usually good about responding within 24 hours. So ask questions, please. If you have a question, please, please, please ask. You have a question? Yes, you may. So please have your parents read through all this. You can sign it now if you want. They need to sign it. And then as your tutor, I will strive to bring excellence to the classroom. Excellence in the materials that I provide, excellence in my understanding of things that I'm trying to explain. I will also be praying for our class, and I will get your homework graded and returned to you within 2 weeks from the assignment due date. Those are kind of the expectations that you can place on me. I will be fair, and I will show grace when grace is needed. That is my my standard that I hold myself to. So, any questions? Okay, so now let's look at the syllabus. So it is done by week. Today is week 1. The date is September 10th. I do have biblical principles down for every week, but honestly, my devotions don't always follow what that says. I sort of, whatever it is that I was doing personally that week in devotions, that I'm like, I should share this, is sort of what ends up happening. But I do write something in the syllabus in case I'm not inspired by something else, I guess. So all the homework under week 1 is the homework you will be doing this week. And that is due next Thursday by midnight. Like I said, tomorrow the Google Classroom will be updated, and it will have places for you to upload each one of these assignments. So it's not there today, but I didn't think anyone was probably going to rush home and do their biology homework tonight. Maybe someone will. And they'll be like, hey, no, it'll be there tomorrow. So this week, those are the pages that you'll be reading. Those are the on your own questions you'll be answering. Notice for the study guide questions, question 1 of the study guide is always definitions. And so I try to have you just do the definitions that are in the reading that we did for that week. And sometimes there's like 26 definitions, and so I break them up so you're not doing all 26 in 1 week. So notice the letters. So this week it's like A through N. So you just have to do those definitions, and then you need to sign the Constitution. Some of the videos that I'll be posting to the Google Classroom, I will require you to watch, like extra videos. Some of them will just be to help bring further clarity or explain something in a slightly different way. And so some of them will be just helpful if you want to watch them. I will let you know if it's something you need to watch, or if it's something that's just like, hey, you might find this interesting. Yes?
Do you want us to type or write down our answers?
So, you can do either, but my preference would be if you do handwrite stuff that you scan it versus taking a picture, because scanning it just makes it clearer in the classroom, in the Google Classroom, versus taking a picture. Sometimes it's fuzzy, sometimes lighting can like blur things out. So if you do want to handwrite, which I'm totally okay with, please try to scan it if you have that. You can type it, absolutely, yes. You can use a Google Doc, you can use a Word doc, you can use whatever the equivalent is in Macs. I don't know, because I don't have Mac, but, and you can upload that, yes, definitely. Okay, so any questions about the syllabus and how that works? If not, then we will start in on our first lesson. Answering just like, simple question. What is life? What is life? That is kind of an abstract question, isn't it? Have you ever really thought about that? Like, what is, not like what is the meaning of life, but like, what does it mean to be alive? What are characteristics that living things have in common? I mean, someone can answer if they want to, but these are kind of meant to be abstract questions. So we'll start in on our notes. You'll notice that there's a combination of fill in the blanks, and then there are spots for you to write definitions. So depending on what type of question or what type of blank it is, the definition or the fill in the blank word will be bold in the PowerPoint here. So biology has a lot of different things, a lot of different moving parts and pieces. It's very, very broad, very broad. That's why there's a lot of specializations in biology. There's microbiology, there's molecular cellular biology, there's genetics, there's zoology, there's botany, there's ornithology. Does anybody know what ornithology is? Birds. Yes, it is. Good job. The study of birds. It's one of those weird ones that a lot of people don't know. There's entomology. Does anyone know what entomology is? Yes, insects. Entomology is the study of insects. And so there's all herpetology? No, but that's a good guess. It's a good guess. Snakes and amphibians. I don't actually know what study of fungus is. Mycology. Oh yeah, I think it is actually mycology. Yep, I think you're right. So there's lots and lots and lots of different specializations of biology, because like I said, it's very broad and there's lots of different divisions of it. Because biology is the study of life itself. And there are a lot of different types of living things. Yes?
So we just need to write the bolded term.
Yep.
It doesn't have itself after the blank.
Oh, okay.
So it's itself.
Just life. The study of life. I actually don't know why I put itself behind it. I just wanted to make emphasis on it, I guess. So biology is the study of life. Bio, the root of that is, it means life. Ology is always the study of something, which is why all the terms that we just labeled had ology behind them. So there are a few qualifications that something needs in order to be considered living. It's what differentiates grass from a rock. Okay, both are found on the ground. One is alive and one is not. What is it that makes a rock not alive and grass a living thing? So there are 4 criteria, and these are pretty universally accepted. You can find nuanced differences and variations in different textbooks. Like for most things. But these are pretty solid. First and foremost, all life forms contain DNA. Deoxyribonucleic acid, which is called DNA. So all life forms contain that. All life forms have a method by which they extract energy. And so you need to be able to extract energy from the surrounding environment, and you need to be able to convert it into energy that the organism can use. So for instance, we eat food and extract energy from either plants or animal matter. Plants get energy from the sun, and they make glucose and then break that down and use that to sustain life in their cells. So you don't necessarily have to be eating something, because obviously plants aren't eating anything, but they still are creating energy and then converting that into usable forms for themselves. 3, all life forms can sense changes in their surroundings and respond to those changes. So this is really, we can see this easily in animals, because they can move, they can sense something and then they move in response to it. Birds will migrate in response to seasonal changes, etc. But plants also can sense changes. It's why the leaves change color in the fall. So not all organisms can physically move from place to place. Some are stationary. They're stuck in one spot, but they still are sensing and responding to changes in their environment. And then last, all life forms need to be able to reproduce. If something can't reproduce, then it's the end of the line for it. So it needs to be able to reproduce. So now we're going to take a closer look at each one of those 4 things. So what is DNA? We're going to spend a section of a chapter on this topic, but a basic definition or working definition of DNA is that it's life's blueprint. It contains the instructions for what makes you you and what makes you run. It contains basic instructions that are the same for every person, like how you convert food into energy in your body, and then it contains unique instructions for you, like the shape of your nose, the color of your hair, things that physically make you who you are, or make you look the way that you do, I should say. So there are some things that are kind of universal in all humans, and then there are other things that are unique to you as a person. So DNA provides the information necessary to take a bunch of lifeless chemicals and turn them into an ordered living system. Key word there, ordered. Something has to be ordered and have a level of organization in order to be alive. Because when we break down and look at what we're made out of carbon and nitrogen and hydrogen and oxygen and elements. These building blocks that just left in a pile mean not very much of anything. But organized in the proper way, create a living being. And that is and that still is such an interesting also nuanced difference, because there is something about life, like something that is alive. Because you can have an organism that has everything organized, but yet is not alive, and it's dead, but it has all the things necessary for life. And there's still this mystery that science can't quite explain as to the actual being of something, that the functioning parts aren't working, and so it's no longer alive. Or a seed which isn't alive but will produce life one day. And there's that, I think there's something more There's something more there that as Christians we can understand because we know the Creator. Energy conversion and life. So that's DNA. Now let's look at the second criteria. So in order for something to maintain life, it needs energy. There are few types of organisms that can feed on things that are just weird. There's certain types of bacteria that are able to feed on chemicals that's just like crazy and bizarre that's able to give them energy. They're literally called extremophiles because they live in extreme places and they feed on things that are just bizarre for a living thing to be able to feed on. All living things need energy to maintain their life functions. Metabolism is a term that we use to sum up all of the processes in an organism which converts energy from outside sources and then uses that energy in internal ways to sustain that organism's life. And so if you've ever heard like, oh, that thing has a fast metabolism, that thing has a slow metabolism, or even people will sometimes say that about themselves, like, oh, I got a fast metabolism, or oh, I've got a slow metabolism. That's the efficiency by which something is burning energy. And there are organisms like birds that have really fast metabolisms. So they have to consume a lot of calories in order to maintain their life functions. And then there are things like a lot of large predators, actually. Lions, bears. For their size, they have slower metabolisms. So it takes them longer to process the energy that's in food. So there's kind of a trade-off there for the amount of calories they have to consume to sustain life because they break down their energy slower, where birds are just rapidly like breaking down everything, and so they have to telling someone they eat like a bird actually means the opposite of what we usually mean that it means. Usually we say when someone's like just like eating a little bit, like, oh, you eat like a bird. You actually should tell somebody that if they're eating a lot, because birds have to eat a lot. So there's two broad processes that go on in metabolism: anabolism and catabolism. So anabolism is the processes in an organism which take simple things and build bigger things out of them. So it's a building process. So you're taking small things and making big things. So this, for example, is what happens inside of a plant when they're taking the sunlight and they're taking water and they're producing glucose. So they're taking sunlight, they're taking water, which is a small thing, and they're making a more complex thing, which is a sugar known as glucose. Catabolism is when we're taking larger molecules or larger things and breaking them down into smaller things. So when you eat your sandwich at lunch or whatever it is that you have for lunch, catabolic processes are going to take the large molecules in your sandwich and break them down into smaller things for you to be able to use. I like to think of, so here's a graphic. How I remember them is I think of a catastrophe, which is something that usually like blows something big up and makes it into smaller things, and that's how I remember. Because really you have to remember one of the two, what it is, and then the other one is the opposite. And so I remember this one, and then that means that I automatically remember what that one is, because this one's big things into small things, blows them up and makes them into smaller things. And this one is smaller things into larger things. And both are happening inside of our body. So one example of an anabolic process, which I said would be photosynthesis, or plants taking light and turning it into energy. So the process of photosynthesis, and this is something that we're going to talk about in a lot more detail later on in the plant chapter, but we're just kind of introducing the concept now, is the process by which green plants And some other organisms, some bacteria, some protozoans, will use the energy from the sun and produce simple chemicals, or they produce their own food. So light is actually a form of energy. It is a form of energy. Now here we have an example of different types of organisms. So thinking from an energy making perspective, so whether they are making their own energy or whether they're having to consume something outside of themselves to acquire their energy, there are a couple terms that we can use to categorize. This is one way, and there's another way that we'll look at on the following slide. So in a following energy up, what we call the food chain, the bottom of the food chain is always made from producers, because producers produce their own energy. They're going to be plants, mostly plants. So producers are organisms that produce their own food, and they do this using sunlight and water in the process of photosynthesis. Consumers are going to be organisms that eat living producers and or other consumers for food. So something that only eats plants, like a rabbit, is going to be a consumer that only eats producers, because it only eats plants. Something like a fox, which is going to eat the rabbit, is going to eat other consumers. So it's not eating the producers, but interestingly enough, it is still ultimately getting energy from the producers that the rabbit ate. Because the rabbit ate the producers, it ate the plants, which then created energy in the rabbit, which sustained its life cycles, which made its muscles work and kept them all able for the fox to then eat. And so we follow that chain back down to the producers inevitably, which is why in any system, the bulk of the food chain is actually made up by plants. There has to be enough plants to sustain the lion at the top. Because if there's not enough plants to feed the gazelle, then the lion isn't going to be able to eat the gazelle. And then finally, there's decomposers. And decomposers specifically break down the dead remains of other organisms. They tend to be fungi and bacteria. Those tend to be what decomposers are. So things are going to die, and then the nutrients and building blocks that make up that organism are going to return back to the soil, which then are going to actually sustain plants. Because plants create their own energy with the sunlight and water, but they still need other chemicals to create their structures. So the actual leaves themselves are made out of carbon and nitrogen and phosphorus and other elements which are returned to the soil from animals and plants that have died before them. And the decomposers return those nutrients to the soil. So they play a very important role in the flow of energy. Another way that we can categorize how we take in energy is with the terms herbivore, carnivore, or omnivore. So an herbivore is an organism that's going to eat plants or producers. A carnivore is an organism that's going to eat other consumers. And an omnivore is an organism that's going to eat both producers and consumers. So people typically are omnivores unless if they're herbivores or vegetarians by choice. Examples of wild omnivores would be bears. They'd be a good example of a wild omnivore. Raccoons would be wild omnivores. Turtles, actually, quite a few species of turtles. Both are going to eat algae and aquatic plants, but then they're also going to eat insects and fish. If it feels like we're just giving new words to the same definitions, it's because we sort of are. we're looking at the same thing from slightly different perspectives, very, very nuanced different perspectives. But they're all terms that are going to come up again and again as we go forward from here. So we're kind of laying the groundwork with these terms. So autotrophs is another term that you can use for a producer. It's an organism that's going to be able to make its own food. Heterotrophs are organisms that depend on other organisms for their food. So they're going to be consumers. Herbivores are going to be organisms that eat only plants. We also refer to them as vegetarians in the human world. Carnivores are going to be organisms that eat only organisms other than plants. So they're going to eat other consumers. And then omnivores are going to eat both plants and other organisms. So they're going to eat producers and consumers. And then we get to move on from energy on the next slide. Not just talk about energy. I will say, though, that looking at the inside of this face shield does actually make you realize how much you do spit when you're talking. I'm going to have to clean that up during lunchtime. Okay, moving on. Sensing and responding to change. Receptors are special structures that allow living organisms to sense the conditions of their internal or external environments. Depending on the organisms, receptors look different. We have lots of different receptors in our bodies that allow us to sense our environment. We have feeling receptors, pressure receptors, temperature receptors, light receptors, auditory receptors, taste receptors, smelling receptors, lots of different receptors that allow us to sense and experience changes. Plants also have receptors, although they're not as obvious because they're held more inside of their cells that are going to be, they have types of photoreceptors that are able to tell when there is light or when there's not, and then also that are able to sense the length of days to know when it's time for their leaves to fall and change colors. A critical part of survival is being able to sense and respond to the environment because there is a pattern of change in creation. There are patterns of change. Even in climates that don't experience the seasons like we think of them here in Michigan, summer, fall, winter, spring, they still experience usually times of rain and times where it's not as rainy. And so they might not, like near the equator, they might not have the same temperature fluctuations, but they usually do have weather pattern changes. And so particularly, organisms in that part of the world might not need to be quite as they're not quite as used to change or have to be quite as specialized for change. It's probably a better way to put it. But like definitely here in our, as you get further and further north, there's a lot more extreme changes that happen. So organisms have to know how to handle that. And some handle it by hibernating. Plants handle it kind of with their own method of hibernating by slowing down their life processes during the wintertime, like trees. Some plants just die, right? A lot of the flowers and stuff just die and they're seasonal and they have to be planted every year. Some will just lose all their green structure, but the bulb and the ground will remain for the following year. Trees just kind of slow all the flow of sap and nutrients moving, so they kind of go to sleep. They enter a period of dormancy.